Hello everyone, welcome to A Foreigner Farming in the Philippines. Tatay is down here, God bless him. He's been running the mower in anticipation of finally getting these fields planted this month. Having him go through again and get the weeds down. This is kind of like our little kangkong plantation here, but all that back in there was getting waist high and long past time for it to be mowed. This area here, we need to do a little sweetening with the rows, make them a little higher. We've got plenty of dirt here on the side. We still have dirt left here, but I wanted to use most of what is left in this bank for this side to raise the height of this. Just same thing we did in field 3 to do in field 2 to a little bit lesser extent. We raised up the height of field 3 so much that I'm not so much that it's higher than field 2, but so much that the drainage from one field to another is just not going to be what I'm wanting it to be. So we may even cut into this bank a little bit to get a little more soil, but we're definitely going to use all this dirt here except for what we need for a dam. We're going to utilize all that, make these furrows a little bit higher, and make the ditches higher as well. That standing water just bugs me. I want to be able to water, and the next day there's no water out there. So that standing water in those furrows, I'm not digging it. So in order to eliminate that needs a couple inches of soil in it. But that couple inches of soil is slightly defeating the purpose of a raised bed. So we need to add soil to the raised bed as well. So all this little field here needs more soil in it. But first it's going to get a haircut. Tatay's going to go through and mow all this. How you doing on gas, Tatay? Do you have enough? That's all?
Yeah.
Is that enough to finish this? No. Okay, here. What you doing, Red? Here, Tatay. Here, might as well get me some vitamins too. Here, give me those back. Just take that. Give me a couple packs of vitamins and put the rest in gas. Hmm? Sure. All right, come on. So we've ordered the plastic for field 3. Should have enough left to do field 2. Field 1 here is only like these 8 or 10 rows here. It's only about half of it. We're gonna leave the other half for the kangkong, which, you know, every animal that we have here likes it, and it's good to use it as a food supplement. So that's what we're going to do. I'll leave Tatay to his work here. So that's where we're at right now. Hopefully by the time the weed barrier gets here, we won't need to redo this field, but it's looking like we might have to. Might have to weed it some. I don't want to put... Yeah, it really wouldn't make much of a difference to cover the weeds with the weed barrier. It'd probably kill the weeds doing it that way. And the vast majority of the weeds that are growing in this field are growing in the ditches and not in the raised bed part. So, I don't know. There's still a little bit of work that needs to be done. This last row here needs to be completed, and down in that corner there it's still a little bit high, and I don't know, I'm going to talk to Tatay about it. I just generally, I don't know, I'm generally not pleased with the height of some of these raised beds out in the center out in there. And the ends it's all fine, but I don't know, there's some of those out in there that I think could just use a little bit more soil. We will see. I've got to make up my mind before we put the weed barrier down. I'm thinking we do need to add a little bit of soil in some of those out there. Look, the raised portion of the bed needs to be at least 8 inches above those ditches. And here on the ends it is. But it seems like out in the middle we've only got like 4 inches maybe. And I just, you know, the whole purpose of having raised beds and these ditches here is so that the water will drain out and the roots will be above the level of the water. And if we've only got 4 or 6 inches to work with, the roots, you know, because the water, you can see the water there in the ditches. Well, underneath the raised beds, that's still the level of the water, even though there's soil there. And the water is still, I mean, if you remove that soil right there, then there would be water there, because that's the level of the water. Well, that's also how far the roots can go down before they're in standing water. So I'd like to get this right before we plant it, but I don't know if we're going to have time. It's always a manpower issue here, and a money issue with having enough, with being able to hire enough manpower. I can only do so much, and I'm slowly petering out. So I'll think about it. Maybe I'll bring Marcel down here and let her have a think. Let her help me think it over. But that's what we're doing on these next fields that are going to be planted. Field 6 is going to be planted this week, but since it's mostly just corn, it's not a big deal. We're going to plant it without the weed barrier. This water that's running here, right down a little closer so you can see it. That's water that's coming out of the well, because the level of the water in the well, well, you can just see it. That's how high it is. And it drains out right from the side of the well there, down this ditch, and goes out. And it also keeps all the rest of this really wet. Now what we're going to do here, this field 4 here, basically over time is going to be primarily onions. The rest of these need to be weeded. There's, I don't know, 3 more rows of onions here. Just got the weeds out of these. This all needs a little more soil brought in as well. Where we're going to get it from, I don't know. But these raised beds need to be wider, and these drainage canals, as you can see, the water from the well is draining right into them. In a perfect world, I'd like to raise all this up 6 inches, but it's that ways uphill. So if I raise this 6 inches, then I gotta raise that field 6 inches all the way back up to field 1. That's never going to happen. But I would like to at least make these raised beds wider. As you can see, we've got one row of onions planted in each of these. There's 2 in this one because it's a little bit wider, except down at the end it's only 1. I would like to make these wide enough so that they could all have 2 or 3 rows of onions planted in them. Again, this one here was wide enough for a double row. And you can see, you know, it still needs to be weeded, but you can see from that portion down, the onions are doing pretty well. But right in here, not so well. And that's because this raised bed isn't raised high enough right in there. It still needs to be higher. So it's something that we've got to continue to work on. And we do have this bank here that we could pull. You know, we could dig back another couple feet and get soil from there, and we may in fact do that. The reason why there's so much water in here is it never stops raining. It rained today. It rained yesterday. It's rained every day. We did have like a 36-hour break 3 days ago, but that was it. Since then, off and on rain every day. We cannot catch a break on this rain. But once we do, a little break in the rain so that we're not just working in total mud, we're going to widen these rows and get them ready to put down plastic. And what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to basically harvest all these onions. And we're in no big rush to do that anyway. That's a couple weeks away, 3 weeks away, until most of these onions here would be ready for harvest. But we're not going to harvest them and sell them. We're going to harvest them for replant. So all these onions here, I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8 rows of onions here, and half of those rows are double planted. So out of those 8 rows, kind of the way that it works, we could get about 20 double planted rows out of those. And that would be enough to do all this side in onions. So at least we can get the plastic down, get these raised, get these widened a bit, maybe raised a bit, get all this side replanted in onions. And this side, you know, we have quite a few peppers over here that I don't want to dig up. The radishes are doing good. The carrots, we got no luck with the carrots. Our soil is just too much clay. It's too hard packed. Maybe in 10 years after we add another foot of rice hulls to it, it'll be loose enough to grow carrots well, but we're not there yet. We also have all these onions here. We got a couple rows of onions here that we could replant, and we've got quite a few onions down there on the other side of this corn. I want to bring it all into field 4 here and basically just grow onions in field 4. This popcorn, it did kind of okay for popcorn, but it's when you look at this and then you look at the sweet corn, it's a pretty big difference. This here is doing really well. It does need to be fertilized one more time. Give it that final little push. It's doing really well. We've fertilized it once already. It needs to be fertilized again. It also needs to be sprayed. We need to get an insecticide on it. All these that we planted around the plastic here, all these tomatoes, they're not doing great. I don't know what the problem is. Maybe the holes aren't big enough. I don't know, but they're not doing great. They don't seem to like this weed barrier. Some of it could be that they were too small when they were transplanted. I don't know, but the tomatoes themselves are just not doing well. Maybe they're too wet. It's probably it. Because of all this rain, the rain gets in, and with a weed barrier on it, it's not like it's going to evaporate and dry out much. So probably the main problem with these tomatoes not loving life is they're just too wet. The peppers in this row, they're doing okay. Not so much in these 2 rows. They're kind of all these need to be replanted with whatever we've got handy. The corn, on the other hand, is doing really well. It's loving life. It's loving this weed barrier. So we'll see. The beans we planted, they're loving it as well. The beans seed we bought today, these rows here are all going in beans. And the corn we got today, you can see the girls they're getting on it. They're getting with it. All this field here is going to be planted in corn, the yellow sweet corn. And that's a pretty big area. This field right here, this half of this field is larger than field 4. Up there, that's what's going to be the onion field. So again, these are the onions here that are all going to be moved up into field 4. We get all this cleaned out, we'll probably just plant the purple corn in here. It's been so wet that this okra is not digging life either. They can only take so much of being saturated. We've got some new okra coming along here. This older stuff, well, it's not looking great. We need to go through and trim these sick leaves off. And I don't know, it'd be nice to try to save some of this for a while. The good thing with okra is that the plants last about a year and you don't have to replant them. They keep producing for a long time. But I don't know, when they're not looking real healthy like these. I mean, they're still, they're still making okra, but they're so wet in here, even on a raised bed, that they're not digging it. So that's what's happening. Thank you, everyone. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe.